Good evening, brothers and sisters, and you know that Nat's given to extremes and exaggeration, so don't take any notice of him. But he's right. You know, brothers and sisters, before we get down to Zechariah, I want to talk about this. I want to talk about this issue. Now look, brothers and sisters, take this seriously. I know you take everything seriously. But you know, this is not just a sign of the times, a sign of the times. This is the sign of the time. And you may have heard that said before, but this is correct. This is the greatest sign of our time. Because you see, brothers and sisters, when we said that Israel would go back to the land, and they did in 1948, and it was a tremendous enthusiasm to the brothers and sisters. We were excited about that. And that sign said very clearly that Jesus Christ is going to come into this world personally. He's going to appear on this earth. We're going to see him. And that was tremendously exciting. But that sign told us, brothers and sisters, that he will come. This is telling us he's got to. This is the greatest sign. Because this is now a situation which is awakening the world to the one and only political solution to that problem. There's only one solution to it. There is no other, and anybody with any sort of logic would see that coming a mile away. And it's happening right up before our very eyes, and we've been saying this now for the last year or so. And that solution, brothers and sisters, is that nation has got to get moved out of the Middle East. There is no other solution that's going to bring peace to this world. And all the leaders of the world are waking up to the fact, friend or foe of Israel, know that that's going to have to be the decision. And it's not going to happen. It isn't going to happen. Because that means that Jesus Christ must come into this world. Believe me, you're watching it happen. You're watching this. The greatest drama of history is about to open. Now look at this. There are 7 million people in that land. And of course they say, here are the poor Palestinians down there in the Gaza Strip. There's only 600,000 of them. Despite the fact there's hundreds of millionaires in there with them. And so the world points to that scene and they say, look at this. And you get people out on the streets of Canberra and out of the streets of Sydney with their banners. The great giant oppressor of Israel. But just widen your vision a bit, brothers and sisters. And there's the whole scene. There are all the Arab nations that surround Israel in the Middle East. Have a look at the numbers down there. 338 million versus 7 million Jews. People have got a narrow view. They don't see that one. And the Arab Spring has woken all those people up. And it wasn't religion, brothers and sisters. It wasn't religion in the Arab Spring. It's become that. That's not what woke them up. It was democracy. Democracy. The unclean spirits like frogs. Liberty, equality and fraternity. And the Bible said, and Brother Thomas said, that that's what's going to bring the nations to Armageddon. And it's doing exactly that. That's what's causing all this. That's how it all started. And the Islamists began to feel their muscle, haven't they? And they hate that nation. And now they've got them hemmed in. And it's in a situation now, brothers and sisters, where this has brought it to the world's attention. And I don't know of any political event of recent days or international event that has caused so much public opinion as that one. The whole world's alive to that because they know that there's going to be dynamite here because there is no other solution. And the numbers game are against Israel. And we can say, yes, we know it's not going to happen. We can rest in confidence, but don't just go on blasé about it, brothers and sisters, because with that is going to come the crisis of all history. And you think about it, you just think about this, you tell me, all through the scriptures, whether you look back in the days of Noah, whether you look at the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, whether you go forward and you see the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70, when did God bring this climax to the situation to a climax when you didn't see extreme difficulty for the believers? And if we think that God is going to introduce his son into this world, brothers and sisters. His son, his beloved son, who never did a wrong thing and suffered tragically for the sins of the world. If you and I think that God is going to bring him into this world in an anti-climax, think again. There never will be a time of trouble such as that. And it'll all be done, not to fulfil Bible prophecy only, not to save Israel only, not to bring us into the kingdom of God only, brothers and sisters, but the main thing in that great drama, that great divine drama, is the glorification of God's Son and the glorification of his Father. That's going to be uppermost. And the whole world, including ourselves, are going to be humbled into the dust to see the majesty of that. It's going to be a climax to end all climaxes. And here is the beginning of it all. Now just listen, look at this. These are recent editions of the Time magazine. Why Israel can't win. And that's right. Humanly speaking, that is dead right. If there was no God, there'd be no Israel. That is right, but we know it's wrong because there's a God. Now you probably can't read the small print under that. Here it's a bit larger for you. The siege of Gaza may punish Hamas, but it won't make Israel safe. Why it is in peril like never before. And what do they mean by that? They mean exactly what they say. But they can pound the Gaza Strip with bomber attack after bomber attack. All the others got to do is every now and then send a few rockets over just to keep the kettle boiling. And world opinion biting its fingernails, knowing that one day that's going to explode. And there's only one obvious solution. And here it is. That flag has got to go. Do you understand that, brothers and sisters? That flag has got to go. And that's logical. That's going to be the world solution. And you and I know that can't happen. I can hardly sleep at night, brothers and sisters. I'm not exaggerating. I can feel it in the air. You know it's going to happen. It's going to explode. And we say, well, you know, Jeremiah said, didn't he, that all their lovers will forsake them. And I was talking to a brother just recently, and perhaps he was expressing what I may have thought in the back of my mind, a lot of other people would have thought. Oh, well, Australia, Britain, you know, especially the United States of America, they'll always be supporters of Israel. Jeremiah didn't say they wouldn't be. He didn't say they wouldn't be. He said their lovers will forsake them. And guess who's been the first? Dear old Australia. When this news came about that the people in the Gaza state down there, the Palestinian state, wanted observer status in the United Nations, Julia Gillard stood up and said no. And the greater majority of her caucus cabinet said yes, we're not going to do that. They're not going to say yes, we're not going to say anything. Now what's that telling you? And Israel come out immediately and said, hey, what are you doing? And the Gaza people, the Islamists come out and said, thank you. And Julia Gillard went on record when she was challenged on that decision. This is what she said when they challenged her in Parliament, on the floor of the Parliament just recently, only today and yesterday. She made a statement today. We will never ever forsake our good friend Israel, our good friend Israel. We will always be supporters of Israel, but we will not speak against the Palestinians going into the United Nations. What is that but her lovers are forsaking her? And they won't be many others There won't be too long, brothers and sisters, before the common sense around the nation, and I'm talking about human common sense, when they'll sit around a table and they'll say, look, there is no other solution. Now, what is the solution? Well, Bob Carr came into Julia Gillard's support, and he said, well, you know, the caucus felt that she was only bowing to the will of the majority, and that's what the Prime Minister should do. And the will of the majority said, well, look, we're not against a Palestinian state. They all know, more than what you and I know, that that state will never, ever, 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 ever be accepted without Jerusalem. And they equally know that Israel will never, ever, ever let it go. Do you understand that, brothers and sisters? It's common sense. It's as plain as this hall. That's what's coming to it. So in the end, someone's going to have to find a way around that bypass. How are they going to do that? Well, that has got to go. That's the solution. And Almighty God said to the wonderful patriarch David, when David bowed his knees and thanked God for the promise, and one of the leading factors of his prayer was that he thanked God for his people Israel and saw his role in the whole matter as completely secondary to God's restoration and the deliverance of those people. That's what he thanked him for. And God said to him, David, they will move no more. The Palestinians want them dead. I believe their lovers won't come out and condemn them. They won't cease to be their lovers, inverted commas. But for goodness sake, brothers and sisters, can you imagine sitting around an international table, men who are educated, looking at that map and knowing that the only solution is two states, they both want that city, and there's not one of them going to give an inch of it, ever. They'd rather be slaughtered on the streets of Jerusalem to give it away. They all know that. They're going to have to say, hey, from Morocco to Indonesia, right across the Near East, the Middle East, the Far East, and out to the Pacific, is what is known as the Muslim belt, right across the top, North Africa, through the Middle East and through India, Pakistan, right down to Indonesia. 1.2 billion people. 7 million Jews. You wouldn't have to be Einstein to work out what's the most political thing and safe thing to do. You might not agree to have them destroyed, but we'll move them. And God said, they're moving no more. Those are the issues. They're simple, brothers and sisters. Even a little Jewish, a little Islamic boy knows that. And you see the placard alongside of it. You can't read all of it. It's obviously saying the same thing. They've all got them. Or they want Israel destroyed. Oh, no, not all the nations agree with that. But just move away the word destroyed for moved. And you'll see what happens. This is it, brothers and sisters, because that's not going to happen. Now, if you didn't do your daily readings today, you missed a treat. You missed a treat. Because what's happening there on that street happened 2,500 years ago. You read about it today. I hope you did. This is what you would have read. And letters were sent by post into all the king's provinces to destroy, to kill, and to cause to perish all the Jews. That didn't come from an Islamist, a Muslim. That letter went out in the name of the king of Persia, who was duped by a Jew hater. That's exactly what we're seeing happening in the world today in politics. Got all the Jew haters stirring up all the governments, even governments like Persia, who were quite friendly with the Jewish people and prepared to relocate them in the land. But it came to that decision to kill and cause to perish all the Jews, young, old, little children, women, in one day. That's what we read today in our daily readings. And at the end it says that to take a spoil of them for a prey. And you've heard that hundreds of times from Ezekiel 38. And we all wondered what it was, didn't we? What was the spoil? Israel got the land flowing with honey, and the Jews, or the Arabs rather, got all the oil. But it's not like that now, is it? Israel is set to become the third biggest exporter of gas in the world. And the biggest one is Russia. And if Israel gets a go up and puts those pipelines across the Mediterranean, which they're planning to do, so they can make the people in Europe warm in winter when Putin turns off his tap, it means that Putin can no longer dictate terms to Europe. And we know that he will. So he went down to Netanyahu and they sat around a table together. And he offered a partnership between Gazprom, his own gas power in the south, which he owns, by the way. He owns the place. And of course it's run on behalf of Russia, but he owns it. And he goes down to Netanyahu to become mates, because he doesn't want that gas to go in the wrong way. That's come down to take a spoil, isn't it? And when he finds that Israel will not go into that and be determined to go their own way, that will be the classic scene, brothers and sisters, to bring Russia down into the mountains of Israel. And our daily reading has also said this. The next verse, or the next chapter, says this. For if thou altogether holdest thy peace, says Mordecai, the little Esther, then shall enlargement and deliverance arise from the Jews from another place. But thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed, and who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? That tingles your spine, doesn't it, to read those things like that? Look at that man's faith. He had faith, brothers and sisters. When his uncle's niece was in there, a dear little girl, a young lady, an excellent young lady, who he loved deeply and who did everything he said, even when she wasn't in his presence. Not all children do that, but she did. The bond between those two brothers and sisters was enormous. That man went into the captivity into Babylon in the days of Jeconiah. He was among that select group of Jeremiah 24 which spoke about the good figs. He was one of them. And with him, of course, was Ezekiel. Daniel had gone earlier. But Ezekiel and Mordecai was the group that God singled out among all the captivity. He said, you're the group I'm going to work with in the land of Babylon. You're the ones that's going to form the little nucleus and the core of the faithful in Babylon. And they stuck to that through thick and thin. And that's what he was. You know something, brothers and sisters? He didn't know what we know. You know why? Because that's what he says. But we know exactly where our deliverance is going to come from. And that man didn't know that. He'd had no idea, except to know that God would not allow the Jews to be destroyed. That wouldn't happen. How? He wouldn't know. But you and I know exactly the place where it's all going to come from. It's going to come from heaven. Not going to come from anywhere else. There are going to be no human saviours for the Jewish people. It's reserved, brothers and sisters, for him who richly deserves it, whose right it is, because he's got a moral right. He's got a moral right to save them because he laid the very foundation of their salvation, eternally, if they want it, in the kingdom. They'll have to live through the kingdom, of course, but if they want that in the kingdom of God as mortals, they can have it. He's got the moral right. And he's got the moral right, brothers and sisters, to brush the nations aside and to blow them out of existence like the chaff of the summer threshing floor. because they are hideous people. Hideous people. He's got the moral right, brothers and sisters, to bury every last stone of Rome beneath the earth. If you read Revelation correctly, you go back and read about ancient Babylon. Of all the nations that God put down, those are the two nations that God said they'll never be seen above the earth again. And all the filthiness, the filthy rottenness that's in that church of Babylon the Great, he's got the moral right to wipe them off the face of the earth. And you and I may shudder at the hideous things they do, and we know in our hearts, brothers and sisters, that we've done some pretty bad things ourselves that we would be ashamed if people knew. But that man has got nothing to be ashamed of. Now, brothers and sisters, it's time. It's been time for a long time. These are not the only signs we're seeing, brothers and sisters. There are clear, unmistakable signs. Tell me, does anyone know? Can anyone come up here and show me from that book when any of the great crises came upon the world in the times, of course, as we say, in the days of Noah, in the days of Lot, in the days of Jeremiah, in the days of AD 70, does anyone know that at that time the ecclesia was on the improve? Do you think, brothers and sisters, that we will be the only generation of Christadelphians that actually defied history to produce a community that's on the up all the time and on the improve at the very eve when God's going to introduce his son and make him stand alone as the king of the world? You think again if you think that's going to happen. And if you can't see, and if I can't see, brothers and sisters, all about us, the clear and unmistakable signs of declension in our meetings, in our general Christadelphian movement over the world, you'd have to be deaf, blind and dumb. It is everywhere. And postmodernism, as Stephen Palmer called it, is having its impact, brothers and sisters. And the ancient traditions, and not all traditions are wrong. Paul exhorted the Corinthians to keep the traditions. He wrote a letter to them and said, let all things be done decently and in order. And I see anything but that happening. And we're on the edge of destiny, brothers and sisters. And we've got to make up our mind. Brother James, 2 Sundays ago, last Sunday week, gave a very simple exhortation. We didn't learn anything when it comes to academic knowledge. But he brought to our attention, brothers and sisters, a profound truth that God's alive and knows everything we think, is in every movement of our life and misses nothing. I don't always practice what's spoken on the Exhort platform. I agree with it all. I haven't heard anything I don't really disagree with. But like all other flesh and blood, you go your own way and you walk through life as if you've never heard it. You don't do that consciously, but you do it sort of naturally, don't you? Because that's what we are. But I've been practicing what Uncle James said. It has made a difference. I've always believed that God is. I never doubted that. But I've forgotten it at times. Didn't disbelieve it. I just forgot it. And what James was trying to tell us to do is never forget that. And when a fleeting thought comes into your mind, prompted by the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eye and the pride of life, stop and say, God's seen that, come. And that's what's going to save us, brothers and sisters. Jesus said, in an hour when ye think not, the Son of Man cometh. In the Greek, he says this. The Greek says, in an hour when you're not thinking. So it's not just an hour you think not, but it's in an hour when you're not thinking. And all of a sudden, the reality is upon you. You turn around, there's an angel standing there. We think that's fantasy. You know, you say, oh no, I don't believe that, Brother John. I know you don't believe that. But you see, subconsciously we do. We've never seen divinity. We've never seen an angel. We haven't got prophets. We don't see visions. We don't have dreams sent from God. We got none of that. We got Israel. The only tangible thing that God has put on the earth for us, and thank God for it, is Israel. And so you see, brothers and sisters, when we talk about angels coming and knocking at our door, that's what Jesus said was going to happen. He will send forth his angels and gather his elect. And I believe if this situation grows rapidly as it's growing now, and it's not going to go away. These people are hammering on the door of the United Nations. They're never going to get up. And the very power of numbers is going to make their numbers larger and larger and Israel smaller and smaller. And the day is going to come, brothers and sisters, we will actually look at an angel. And I've got a vivid imagination. And it frightens the daylights out of me to think about that, because it's going to be an experience that none of us know. And we'll be like Daniel, flat on our face. And he had good reason to stand up, because I'd love to hear the words spoken to him, spoken to me. Oh man, greatly beloved. Wouldn't you love to hear that? And stage by stage, he was able to stand on his feet without fainting. We are about to have that experience. That's my belief. So, brothers and sisters, I've tried to impress you, because I know we love to hear the signs of the time, but this is not just the sign of the time. This has got to be it. I don't think tomorrow we're going to wake up and say, well, the Palestinians have given up. They realise they can't get Jerusalem, among other things, so why worry? I don't think you're going to hear that. You're not going to hear that. They're going to hammer on that door. Hammer on that door, and it's going to become louder and louder and louder until the nations will say, look, Israel has got to go. Well, brothers and sisters, I hope that was helpful.